It's 7 o'clock. Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, Town of Concord, with a one public hearing tonight, which is Sims Development and Permitting LLC being the applicant as a result of the judgment on Land Court Case 21 miscellaneous 000486, appealing the denial of the application of Sims Development and Permitting LLC under Section 7.5 of the zoning bylaw for the construction of a definitive subdivision requiring the removal of 60,690 cubic yards of earth at 146B and 1,442 Main Street, 110 and 11B Highland Street, parcels number 2407, excuse me, 2408, 2409, and 2409-1. In accordance with the Land Court judgment, the hearing is for the Zoning Board's consideration and imposition of reasonable conditions on the earth removal operation that do not require change or alterations of the approved plans, such as reasonable conditions relating to the hours and days that work may be conducted. Since this is a all virtual meeting, I will do a roll call of the members, the Zoning Board members that are present. Thomas Swain.
Yes.
Elizabeth Dwyer-Leonard.
Here.
Ravi Friya.
Present.
And I didn't see Stephen. So Chair, obviously, Theo Kunemans is present as well. So 4 members, we have a quorum. I think the way we're going to do it tonight, I think the draft decision has been looked at by some of the neighbors and has been reviewed by counsel of the applicant. So we have a very well worked through decision, but what I think we want to go through tonight is just go through the conditions, not necessarily one by one, but go through the conditions and then go from there. Right off the bat, I will take public comment later on. I am not taking any comment right now. So we will take public comment once the board has gone through the conditions, and then we'll take a public comment and take it from there. Is there anybody from the applicant here? Can I?
Jeff Ruda, Mr. Chairman, from Sims Development, and also Josh Latham.
Great, thank you. Elizabeth, do you want to pull up the decision, and then we'll go through it, and to my fellow board members, just chime in, and we'll go through these. So Elizabeth, if you'd be so kind to kind of scroll through.
Okay. Starting on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Okay. Starting on page 1, the first condition lists all of the plans that are subject to this permit, A through K. Starting on page 2, if there's any comments dealing with tree stump and wood waste, idling of vehicles, parking, no parking on Main, Highland, and other public roads. The hours.
Is that item? Excuse me. Is that item number 3?
Yes. Item 3 deals with idling, and item 4 deals with no parking on Main Street, Highland, and other public roads.
Can I raise an issue on number 3?
Go ahead.
One of the neighbors submitted a point to say the 10 minutes should be changed to 5 minutes to be consistent with Mass state law. And he cites the idling law. So the question is anybody have an objection if the 10 minutes is changed to 3 minutes, to 5 minutes?
So in the most recent decision, the most recent revision that was sent and circulated to the board and posted, that 10-minute reference was taken out and the reference to Mass state law was incorporated.
So, and does that law call for the 5 minutes? Do you know?
Yes,
Oh,
it
okay.
does.
Okay. All right. So, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then, are you now at item 4?
Sure.
One of the neighbors said the word will should be changed to shall. I don't happen to be an English major, so I'm not sure if that's important or not, or if the applicant cares.
I think changing will to shall is fine. That's consistent with the rest of the decision.
Okay. Second here, if I gotta. Okay. Are we an item? I'm sorry, you go ahead, Elizabeth.
No, that's fine.
What's
Item five.
your next comment, Tom?
On item 5.
Yep.
They suggest that the words earth removal should be added to the list of activities, and that seemed appropriate to me.
So we can add that. I think that just clarifies. We can say any.
Right.
Well, it's not. Well, the construction noise bylaw is, it's site preparation, tree removal, site work. We can add earth removal, and grading shall be in
Right.
compliance.
Good. Also on item 5.
But Tom, to your point,
Yeah.
The actual earth removal under item 7 is
Yeah.
more restrictive than the noise construction bylaw. So I would
Got it.
probably prefer not to edit number 5, since number 7 deals with the trucking of earth removal.
That's fair. That's fair. Now, one of the neighbors has raised the question of whether there ought to be some restrictions, even if you took number 7. And among other things, they identified porch fests. Now, I happen to live in a neighborhood not too far from this project, and I've been surprised the last couple of years at the numbers of people that show up for the porch fest activities. So I don't know if the applicant would be comfortable to include porch fest as a restricted time in which earth removal could be undertaken, because I have been amazed at how many people show up.
So I'm not sure. So Porch Fest, for Mr. Ruda, Mr. Latham, Porch Fest is I think it's a Saturday, generally a Saturday event. There's probably 7 to, I think one year they had 10 different bands or, people playing all over West Concord. I think there are a few thousand people that come to Porch Fest. I think Comm Ave is actually blocked off at certain points. So if that's agreeable, you're muted, Jeff.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I go to the Porch Fest in Melrose. We'll agree to not do any earth hauling that day.
That'd be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have a feel for this, but I just think I'd like to raise it for everyone. Again, under item 5, somebody's, again, a neighbor said, gee, should we add something about controlling the earth removal on the first and last days of school for Thoreau Elementary School? Now, I'm not recommending that we make that change, but is that in anybody's bailiwick concerned about that issue?
So I think under item 7, that's within the purview of the police department. As far as, the school, on those certain days.
Yep.
The school patterns, the commuting patterns, and the children and parents and vehicles going to the schools are different. And I'm sure that is something that the police department will have a conversation with the applicant about.
Great, thank you. For my education, Elizabeth, does the noise bylaw by and large control earth removal activity?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
The town's construction noise bylaw, for any project, it's not just this project, is site preparation, site work, grading, it's exterior noise. I can bring up the noise bylaw if you'd like to review it.
No, I realize, no, I just wanted to know, because I personally haven't read that, for, if I ever read it, it's been a long time ago.
It is only for exterior noise, so once projects, so for new home construction, once the exterior framing is up and sheathing is up and they're doing interior work, then the construction noise bylaw does not apply.
Okay.
So we went.
Go ahead.
Yep. As I said, 8 is the coordination with the police department. And the need for police details. 9 is a standard condition. This permit needs to be
Good. Elizabeth,
recorded.
could I ask, I'm sorry, could I ask you
Yeah.
to go back for just a second?
Yeah.
Does the earth removal that we're talking about here deal with tree removal or not? I'm not suggesting it does, but I think I'd like to see clarity because several of the neighbors raised the issue about should we include some language about tree removal? And I'm thinking, well, gosh, that's separate maybe from earth removal, but I'm just raising it so the board can at least comment on that.
So tree removal is separate from earth removal, but tree removal is part of the site work, and there are some conditions in this permit dealing with site work, and there's also conditions in the definitive subdivision plan that deal with site work. And
Okay.
tree removal is part of site work. It is not part of earth removal.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And 10 is requirement that the haul route be reviewed and approved. There are restrictions on the specific restrictions on the haul route. Like they would not be able to go down Com Ave and over the Pale Factory Bridge since that has a weight restriction. And so 10 deals with approval of the haul route, which the applicant has provided had provided a preliminary haul route that was reviewed. So if things have changed since then, that will be reviewed again. On to page 3, 11 is the standard condition for a construction safety and sequencing plan. This deals with how the site is secured, the phasing of the different steps in the development. And that is submitted to different departments through me. And then in concert with that, there's condition 12. We have a
When you before you go to
meeting.
12,
Yeah.
I had a small tiny addition on 11.
Yeah.
In addition, the applicant will fence the property frontage on Highland Street. I would like to add a scrim to that fence. I would assume that it's a standard 6-foot construction fence chain link. And if we can just add a scrim to that fence on the frontage at least, would help, the visual impact would be a bit negated there, and it would also help with the dust, keeping dust and all down. So that could be done. I
So
think.
this is a fence with,
Scrim.
That's a-
SCRIM.
SCRIM.
Yeah.
So is, for everybody else, since that's a new term for me, is that just the netting that goes across the chain link fence? Okay.
Yeah. You see that on plenty of construction sites. Just that
Yes.
sort of kind of almost opaque netting.
Okay.
Also, with respect to, are you on item 13?
No, 11. We just finished
I'm sorry.
11.
Yeah, sorry.
So 12 is the standard condition regarding a construction safety and sequencing plan. Myself and members of all the other different departments go out there, review the construction safety and sequencing plan, review erosion controls that will be in place, review the location of security fence, and go through the conditions prior to site work commencing.
And would it be in that meeting, Elizabeth, that your group identifies any potential issues with the wall, or to protect the houses above it against any damage to their foundations or their walls and et cetera?
No.
Where does that get covered, if at all?
I think that's, I would have to defer to council on that, but I don't think that's part of this board's deliberation on this permit and these conditions. It's not something that was reviewed.
Well, if you're removing earth, which this is, I believe we're talking then. If you're removing earth, I assume that there could be on any given project some concern of, gosh, if you remove that wall of earth, the house next door is going to fall down. And so I'm assuming that somewhere there's some protection, because at least the neighbors in the materials they've submitted to us have said, hey, we need to have some identification that the earth removal won't result in impacts negatively of our foundations, etc. And the applicant, and he may have some good answers to that, or your site plan review may have dealt with that.
Right.
But to me,
So
that's
all I
ahead.
can tell you
Sorry.
is part of, the board's previous review when this was going through an application process. The board had a geotechnical engineer review these plans. The geotechnical engineer did make some recommendations which have been incorporated into this permit. There were no recommendations or conditions dealing with foundations of adjacent residential dwellings.
Is it appropriate to ask the applicant if he has any thoughts on that issue?
I do. The letter you're reading about is where somebody wanted to have a survey done of their foundations and all the abutting. That's for blasting. That's not for earth removal. There is one area that the planning board covered in their approval that I'm sure Elizabeth remembers, that abuts Center Village, where the geotech had us do some retaining walls and the like to make sure the earth stayed in place there. That's the only place, and it's really belt and suspenders. We have 57 test holes in this site, and it's probably some of the best soil I've ever seen in my career.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So would you like me to continue, Theo?
I would. Yeah. Go ahead. And I'm just trusting that the board members will speak up if there's anything.
Since we're stopped, I actually have a question that'll take us back to condition number 5. Can I ask that?
Sure. Go ahead.
So I saw in the comments from the neighbors the concern about the long hours of 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays and then and Saturdays. And I know construction work often starts early, so that perhaps that 7 a.m. is pretty necessary. You tell me if we're still at a point where we could ask the applicant to consider limiting, or if we can limit from the hours 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to make a small adjustment to end of day, where I would consider it'd be less likely that they'd be working all the way up until then, would also be something then that the neighbors could count on, considering this will be, disruptive for them for a long time. And great that housing's getting built, really important, but I wonder if that wouldn't be a show of good faith to the neighbors.
Yeah, this meets our noise bylaw, the town's noise bylaw. But if you wanted to limit that, Elizabeth, where would you want to go with that? What would you want to suggest?
If it's me, Elizabeth, I would suggest that we were just changing that, and that we say, in this case, we're limiting the hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Those are the available work hours on weekdays and Saturdays.
Saturdays is 6 p.m., right?
No, that's Sundays and holidays.
Okay, yeah. Mr. Ruda, do you have any comments on that?
I do. The jurisdiction of this permit is for earth removal, and you've already restricted those hours in number 7.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Let's continue then, Elizabeth Hughes.
Okay. 13 is a standard condition. They're disrupting more than an acre, so they are required under the EPA to submit a notice of intent general permit. 14 is a standard condition that there be an independent environmental monitor on site. Then we start on page 4. And 15 deals with potential damage to Main Street. 16 deals with the cut slope behind 2 of the lots closest to Center Village. 17 deals with dust control. 18 deals with a requirement to termination of service for the 2 existing dwellings on the property, which I believe those dwelling addresses have been changed since the property was divided. So I will verify and amend those those 2 addresses.
Elizabeth, on item 17, if the neighbors thought there was a dust problem, who do they contact?
They would contact the police department,
Okay.
and then or they can contact the building commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Um, 19 deals with the condition that was a recommendation through the geotechnical peer review. And item 20 is also recommendations from the geotechnical peer review.
When the site work, when the earth removal is completed, then that performance guarantee, I assume, goes away?
Which performance guarantee?
Well, I believe is it in 20? Somewhere there's reference here to I think a performance guarantee. It says prior to the final. Where'd they pick that up? Prior to? No, I'm sorry. Did the old draft by chance have a provision about prior to the final release of the performance guarantee?
Yes, more than likely in the previous versions there was.
Okay,
But that was removed because there is
Oh, okay.
already a requirement for a performance guarantee for the definitive subdivision.
got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we went through it now. And board members, any comments here before I open it up to the public?
Another
Go ahead.
question I have is where it talks about dust being an issue. I'm wondering if we need to get more specific about what would constitute an issue.
Yeah. How I think that's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
I don't think, when is dust an issue? Everybody has a different standard, I think, and I'm
Well,
sure the
I mean,
neighbors will have
considering
it.
it will be contentious if it comes up. I was thinking it might be helpful if there's some criteria.
I don't know of any dust criteria, if there are any. I think it's a call to the police department if it's if it's dusty, I would hope, and if anybody has any of the neighbors have an issue with a dusty situation, I think a call or a visit to the construction superintendent will be the first step, asking whether they could do something about it, whether they find it a dusty situation. And if that yields no relief, then it's a call to the police department.
So,
Yeah,
Theo, there's also, there are DEP standards regarding, air quality. And that, I believe, town council can correct me, but I think the health division also has some oversight into something, a construction site that, may be, far too dusty.
to the extent that it's
Sure.
possible, yeah, it just seems like it would
Sure,
be helpful
but-
to lay out the pathway here of how what people should just expect to have to deal with, what would be a problem, and how they should deal with the problem if it comes up.
Yeah, I mean, I stand by the fact that, you talk to the superintendent first, see whether they can address it. And then second of all, it's the police department. I mean, none of the neighbors, I bet, are going to take air quality samples, and and then call DEP about that. So I think that's the path that's most likely. It's the quickest because by the time you do anything else, you don't want to be a week down the road because it might have rained and there goes your dust. So,
and I'm also aware that the building commissioner also has certain abilities to make sure that the site is kept in a safe and compliant manner.
Okay.
But Christina Marshall, town council, is also on, who she can add things.
Yeah, there are state level regulations that kind of outline dust criteria and what is a problem and what's not. So I think it's probably best to leave the condition as is and allow in this situation, allow the person who's receiving the complaint to kind of make that assessment on a fact by fact basis.
Okay, makes sense.
okay, no other further comments from the board. Then before I open it up for public comment, it's just that, we want to keep in mind that land court, this came back from land court, and land court ordered the town to issue the earth removal permit subject only to such reasonable conditions as do not require change of alteration of the plans submitted by the plaintiff, such as reasonable conditions relating to the hours and days during which work may be conducted. So I think that's important to state. And then I think the town, with the reasoning that is posted on the website, the town has decided to comply with the judge's order and to not appeal it. And so we are here tonight. We have been trying to come up with these reasonable conditions within the framework sort of that was set by the judgment. So that being said, I'll open it up for public comment, and anybody who wants to speak, please raise your hand. Ms. Dritt.
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green. I know that we have no requirement to, they have no requirement to do that, but I also know that Symes was more interested in the PRD that he submitted first. Would it be possible? Would he be interested in revisiting that instead and turning it into more of a win-win for both Symes and the town?
Mr. Ruda, would you do you want to answer that, or?
Yeah, we're moving ahead with the project as approved.
Thank you.
Would you not? I mean, the town lost. I think it was decided wrongly in favor of business and against the environment. And the first plan that they had was good, excellent.
That was also not approved, and then the subdivision was not approved, and that was appealed. So that's the applicant, decided to not pursue the PRD and go forward with the subdivision.
I know that, but would you consider going back with the PRD if we would guarantee that there would be no blocks from the town?
You want to reiterate that, Mr. Ruda, again?
I already answered the question.
Okay. So, thank you, Ms. Britt. Kagul.
Hi, my name is Karen Aguil. I'm from Center Village.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Now I'm used to having my name butchered. That's fine. I'm from Center Village, and I'm on Center Village HOA trustees, and our property obviously directly abuts to the excavation areas for the new development. Our concern, not addressed in the earth removal permit conditions, relates to the high probability that there will be some negative effects on the health of the trees, which are near the property lines and close to the excavation areas. As one example, there is a sugar maple that is a boundary tree that's directly on the property line itself. We've completed a preliminary review with an arborist who has confirmed that there are areas of risk, and that we ask if Symes consulted with an ASCA certified arborist during the development of the excavation plans. We respectfully request, as part of the conditions, that Symes work proactively with Center Village along with an ASCA certified arborist to review and qualify trees at risk and to provide a mitigation plan for Symes to implement to ensure Center Village and the new neighborhood homes as well will not be at risk for future issues with trees that may become health issues. Additionally, just from the call today, we were wondering also that we heard about screening being mentioned for Main Street and Highland. I did not hear of any screening being discussed for Center Village, and ask if that was also part of the plan. Thank you very much for listening to our concerns.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, since we're discussing earth removal here, I'm a little bit at a loss here on how to deal with this request. Mr. Ruda, do you have any comments on this, or?
I do. I don't recognize you. I had extensive meetings with Center Village probably 5 years ago when we were going through the permitting process. You should reach out to me. I'm sure someone there has an email, or you can go to my website and find me, simesassociates.com, and I'll come and meet with you.
Okay,
We're actually staying away from your property line to a certain degree.
okay, I think part of it is it's not clear to us where
Yeah.
exactly that is, so that would be great if you could.
Sure, this is really a private matter, so if you reach out to me, I'll come out and meet with you folks.
Okay, thank you.
I
Appreciate
did,
it.
I know I did 5 years ago. I don't recognize your name.
I'm new to the development.
I thought so. Okay.
Thank
All
you.
Thank you.
Theo,
Thank you, Mr.
Theo,
Ruda.
I will forward Mr. Ruda's email address to her.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson.
Hi, Scott Richardson, 260 Elsinore Street. A meta comment for the ZBA. This opportunity this evening is for you representing the town, representing the neighbors, representing the citizens of this community to lay down what are reasonable conditions for the developer. It's really, I don't think, appropriate to be asking the developer if they'll be willing to do something in this forum. I don't think we should be deferring to the developer. I think you and we, but you in particular, think through what's appropriate, what's reasonable regarding the earth removal. And then you write this up and you send it over. And if they find it unreasonable, I can only imagine they'll be more than happy to tell you they find it unreasonable. So please stop, please, I encourage you to represent your community as opposed to the interests of the developer. I'll just speak very clearly here. We are dealing with a developer that in the first phase of this project caused considerable nuisance for some neighbors. You have letters from neighbors about that. There were multiple violations of our reasonable regulations regarding construction when they built those houses. That's documented. So let's please not defer. Second, I don't understand why we are having the police department become environmental monitors. And I don't think why we have our police department responsible for managing the times of the trucking. We should say, here's when we as a community believe it's reasonable for the trucks, the thousands of trucks, by the way. You have an earth removal plan from Patriot Trucking identifying the exact number of vehicles that it's going to take. It is a massive amount. Keep in mind, we've never had an earth removal project like this in a neighborhood of this kind. So this is a dramatically large amount of removal. And we as a community get to say what's reasonable about that removal. We're not saying they can't remove the earth. We just want to make it so that our kids who are going to the school, our people who are playing at the field, there's a ride out field is very close to the site. So when they're doing all that earth removal, there's going to be a lot of impact on a lot of community. So that's why I thank you for mentioning my email about the Porch Fest. Absolutely Porch Fest. Absolutely the day of the Thoreau road race should not be. We should be specific. We know that the school gets out early on Wednesdays. We should write that in this document that you can't do earth removal trucking on those Wednesdays when the kids get out early. It says in the draft, school commuting hours. Well, we know when school commuting hours are on Wednesdays. I gave, I believe, the town, or we can provide a list of when those are. My point is, this is our last opportunity to try to make this horrible, horrible project somewhat livable for people who pay taxes in this town. Last piece. I'm very concerned about the emissions. Now, I believe, and I'm not a lawyer, but I believe we should hold as part of the earth removal process consideration of the diesel emissions from the trucks. You can't remove the earth without a truck. they're using diesel trucks. They said that. So we know there's going to be a dramatic increase in diesel emissions. It seems only reasonable to me that if there's an air pollution warning in a summer month in particular, and we do have air pollution warnings in this area, that they shouldn't be able to do trucking on those days. I submitted a comment to this in my letter.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Richardson. Next is Ms. Quackenbush.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm asking about item 12 and 16, and I'm asking on behalf of a friend of mine who is right on the slope. You do talk about geostability and foundation stability in terms of being sure that the folks, our neighbors in Center Village, aren't impacted by the construction. But at least my friend who lives there talks about water. So I would like to know what you're doing in terms of geohydrology. Are you having a geohydrologist review these plans to be sure that whatever earth removal is, you know, or tree removal in concert with that, does not change the underlying hydrology? We live in a very uncertain glacial topology in New England where you don't know where the water's going to come from and where it's going to hit. I worry that the foundations in Center Village will be impacted not only by the stability of the slope, but also by the change in the water flow and the hydrology. I would like to see whatever it's called, a geohydrologist, I think, be part of this number 12 and number 16 in terms of assuring that the development does not put at risk our neighbors, the neighbors of the abutters, I mean, the true abutters of this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quackenbush. I know that
I would
during
love
the,
to know, I'd love to hear the applicant's comment. Jeff.
well, I know that during the planning board approval process, there has been plenty of research and debate done about that. But
About what? About the stability and the hydrology, or just
yeah,
the stability?
Ms. Ruda, do you want to? I mean, you're more familiar with that planning board process than we are.
Happy to, Mr. Chairman. On page, I believe it's page 13 and 14 is a table of 57 test pits done throughout the site, where we established a high groundwater mark. And one of the conditions on this permit, I don't know what number it is, Elizabeth probably knows it better than I do, is we can't dig below the water line. So everything that you expressed concern about was addressed at the planning board approval.
Okay, well, I hope that is monitored and assured compliance with. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Next is
Theo,
Ms.
it's condition, it's condition 19.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay. Ms. Katz, please unmute. Yep.
Cynthia Katz, 20 Conant Street.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really appreciative of what Scott Richardson said, because I feel like the idea that neighbors are going to have to be going to the construction manager if it's too dusty seems really onerous. And I wonder whether a condition can be made that we require air testing for dust on a regular basis so that we have baselines. And I really think that it is sort of ridiculous the way what seems like that the town is just kind of giving over things to the developer rather than saying, here are the conditions. Here's the times when you can't do this. Here are the dates when you can't do this. I really hope that ZBA members are going to recognize that the community here has been speaking, and I hope that you'll represent us well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the ZBA listened very carefully during the application process for this project, and I think we we heard the community loud and clear, and we ended up with a denial of a permit. This was appealed, and the judge came out with a decision that was pretty clear and definitive. So we are now not bowing to the developer, but we are working within the framework that was set out by the decision of the judge. And you know, we might not have liked that decision of the judge as much as you all do. I mean, we're there with you, but the decision is a decision, and you know, reasonable conditions are conditions. You know, we can impose reasonable conditions, and it's not obviously, you know, what neighbors consider reasonable conditions might not be what the applicant, the developer, considered reasonable. And you know, I want to make sure that whatever we decide and vote on here tonight, that the developer is not going to go back to the judge and, you know, will throw out our decision. So
Theo, can I add also something? So you know, there will be an independent environmental monitor for this site. They will be looking at all sediment and erosion control. They will also be responsible for weekly inspections, and that also ensures that the dust control measures are being implemented, and that the amount of dust is kept to an acceptable level. An independent monitor is a qualified professional that the Concord Public Works Engineering Division will review and approve that independent environmental monitor, and that's included in condition 14. To the question about the police department, that is, you know, during non-business hours. It is no different than you call the police department when your power goes out during non-business hours. During business hours during the week, a call can be sent to the building commissioner, who will have all the contact information for the site superintendent, Concord Public Works Engineering, as well as the environmental monitor.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Mr. Edges.
Hi there, Jeff Edgers from 50 Highland Street. I'll just say first that it's really heartbreaking where we're at right now. We live right on the street right next to the property, and we just look at things like the foxes that live there and the trees that are there, and it's a pretty helpless situation. And you know, unfortunately, we had a PRD. It was 5 years ago, and I was one of the loud people who said, be careful, because when we lose this, we're going to end up with what we have right now. So there we are. I just want to advocate for something, and I wondered if I could make it. It passed over quickly, and I wondered if Mr. Ruda would just reconsider this. You know, the neighbors sent a letter about very specifically a few of the houses that are right on the border of that property. I think there are maybe 4 or 5 that we're talking about. And those folks, you know, a lot happens during a construction process. It moves beyond the earth removal. There's the trees falling, there's whatever blasting. And I would think it would be good for both sides to actually have a structural engineer go into those houses and, you know, be able to check the foundations and be able to have that set in the record. You know, it helps the developer, I would think, because at the end of this process, if somebody comes up and says, hey, I've got a crack in my 110-year-old house, you can say, well, look, we looked at that and that was already there. And I just, you know, the amount of nuisance this is going to create for those folks in the first place we know. But I think that would makes some difference and be helpful, and also just be a smart way to do a project like this, whether it's a big project like the Big Dig or just a small thing like this tiny development. Sorry. So I don't know if Mr. Ruda could talk about that or think about that, but I think it would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Edges. Mr. Ruda?
There are houses in between the abutters on Highland, the two houses that we built, and where our excavation process is taking place. So this is going to be the same excavation will take place around Highland that already took place when we built the two houses. Just, doing a pre-blast survey, there's no ledge, Jeff. There's zero ledge. Like I said, there's 57 test holes. We went down as deep as 12 feet. I've never seen a site as clean as this. Doing the survey that you're talking about is something that you do for a pre-blast, not for removing gravel.
Well, I'm just telling you.
I understand.
Those folks did not find that to be an enjoyable process, and they're looking at how many more fold properties we're talking about there. They didn't find that first wave to be. They found it quite upsetting. Some of the impact on their property. So I think it would be a stroke of goodwill to even meet with a couple of them and talk with them, because it would make a difference to them.
Everyone has my email. Happy to sit down with them, Jeff.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Hi there. It's the little things, right? So I really appreciate the consideration of Porch Fest. I just wanted to note that that's June 14th from 1 to 5 p.m. And what I heard Mr. Ruda say was that he would agree not to have any earth removal activities during that period. So I just wanted to clarify whether that meant there would be no construction activity during that period, or because obviously there's other construction activities that make noise.
I don't know, Elizabeth, how did we word that in the decision?
It was included in condition 7, which is just the earth removal trucking hours.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I'm speaking specifically about the Porch Fest.
Yeah.
They will agree with that.
Thank you very much.
You're
welcome.
Thank you.
So I will leave it in condition 7, but I will add a similar sentence to no construction activities on the West Concord Porch Fest Day.
Afternoon, after 12 on Porch.
Oh, yes.
Starts at 1.
During West Concord Porch Fest.
Right. So we can work in the morning.
Yeah. Thank you. Ms. Willis.
Hi, Anna Willis, 99 Highland Street, direct abutter. I'd like to just thank Jeff Edges for speaking on behalf of our street, and I would also like to double down on some of the points that he raised. In that, being a direct abutter, we are extremely concerned about the vibrations. I would like to say to Jeff Ruda that we were, when we experienced the building of the houses around us, directly as we are direct abutters, there was a lot of big noise and ground shake when the trees fell. There was a lot of big movement when they had the machine that tamped down the earth. I guess for the basement floor, we could feel our house shake when that happened. There's a lot of trees that would be needed to clear for the one remaining house that's going to be built on Highland Street. If it's anything like it was before, there will be a lot of vibration there. And our house is built in the 1890s. So might not be as forgiving as perhaps a new house, and I'm not sure it's earthquake resistant. We're extremely concerned about the noise, the vibration, the dust. Not going to be able to open our windows for quite some time, and the on cost of the AC, which we typically don't like to run unless it's really hot. And yeah, we want to have faith in everything being monitored, and maybe not just a spot check every week, but how is this going to be monitored from hour to hour? Is that something? And to be honest, I haven't read the full report. There's also the other point that I'd like to raise is pest control, because as I'm sure many people would know, particularly Jeff Ruder, when you fell a whole forest, wildlife have to go somewhere, and quite often some of that wildlife might pick your house and kind of make lots of visits, and it might not be too nice place to live with that happening. So I'd really like that to be mitigated also. And so yes, with the vibration and stuff, I really would like a structural engineer to come and give a status report sort of before, so we can see what's happening with our house during and after. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Willis. I think the structural engineer has been addressed tonight already. And although I might not disagree with you, but I think the applicant here has stated that he's not willing to go there. So and again, we come back to what is reasonable, but if there were any blasting being done out on site, this would be a requirement. But since there's no blasting, there is no requirement. So
okay, so I guess I'm going on last time. Jeff Ruder did mention in quite some, many times that there would be blasting. And so do we now know that there's definitely not going to be any blasting?
It's as it was stated earlier today, there was a lot of test pits done and no ledge has been found. So there is no blasting.
Okay, so I missed that bit. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for explaining.
Mr. Madigan.
Hi, Jack Madigan, 215 Prairie Street. I would just like to reiterate the fact that this is our last opportunity. It seems like we're just kind of agreeing, the contractor is agreeing, and we're moving on. I mean, I'm really nervous that we're not putting things in writing. This contractor has no problem with suing us if we're overstepping again. But I really would like, the citizen issues to be put in writing and put some sort of enforcement behind them, so that in case we need to look back and see that something needs to be enforced, it's able to be enforced. Okay, it was something that we agreed to, and then going forward, the developer agreed to it. If the developer doesn't agree to some of these things, they will take us to court. They sue the town every time they do a development. So I don't know why we're trying to be so, we're pussyfooting around this. Okay, most of us believe that the judge erred on their decision. Okay, of course, it didn't work out the way we wanted it to, but there is no reason. Reasonable conditions put on the developer is what the judge said. And I don't believe anything that people are coming up with. Having a structural engineer come around in the homes that are bordering it to check and to document to see what type of foundations and things people have. Okay, regardless of whether he's saying that there's not going to be blasting, I mean, there's going to be heavy equipment there. Okay, thousands of trips of heavy equipment are going to be made. And if we don't document it on the front end, it's not going to be, people are going to be just out of luck on the back end when they realize they have all this has caused a big crack in their foundation. Of course, the developer at that point will say, yep, wasn't us. Okay, probably the weather or something. Okay, we really need to make sure that this stuff, we have these monitors in place. It's in place in terms of the writing, in terms of this document that we're going to be given to the developer and make sure that everything is, the way we're talking about it tonight. Again, I reiterate, they will have no problem suing us if they believe that we're overstepping. Okay? I don't think any of the things that have been mentioned thus far are unreasonable. Okay? This is in the heart of downtown West Concord. Okay? Right near a school. And when we start talking about the early removal on when the kids get out early on a Wednesday, I mean, that stuff, we should be putting that all in writing and making sure that all of that stuff is there so that they're not going to be doing these trucks, these 18-wheelers, leaving on 62 as the kids are walking by or trying to cross the street there. I understand it's going to be a police presence, but is that spelled out on Wednesdays? There's going to be a detail at, for when these trucks are coming out. Is there a detail regularly over there so that they're stopping traffic to let those trucks actually, exit onto 62? I'm just nervous that we're not putting all this in writing and we're just going to have trouble after trouble and problems going forward because it's not being explicitly written down. Again, this guy, Symes will sue us if they don't like what we're doing. But again, I believe it's our last opportunity to be able to do this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madigan. A couple of things here. Obviously, we have a decision here tonight, but before then, there has also been a planning board decision that has a lot of conditions in it. So don't forget that that's still out there. And I do want to, again, as I read earlier today, tonight, I do want to read what the judge said. It's to issue the earth removal permit subject only to such reasonable conditions as to not require change or alteration of the plans submitted by the plaintiff, such as reasonable conditions relating to hours and days during which work may conducted. So that's the framework that we are working under. So, Mr. Cooley.
Theo, if I can add, please, to the comment about police details. Yes, condition 8 deals with the requirement for police details for the earth removal operation as it enters and exits onto Main Street. It is a standard practice for development projects, not just this project. That the coordination of when police details are required is up to the police chief. And so I don't feel it's within our standard practice or within the jurisdiction of the board to direct the police chief on how to handle his department and police details on public roads. To the question of regarding the trucking times and the school release, that is also in condition 7. The police department will set the times as far as no trucking during school commuting times set by the police department. I am sure the police department is very well aware of early release days, and that will be part of the conversation that they have with the developer moving forward.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Mr. Cooley.
Yeah, thanks. We did submit another letter. It was kind of nearby neighbors, so not direct abutters, but just behind direct abutters. And I think, some of the issues have been raised already. I want to highlight and emphasize a few others. Theo, so you're talking about sort of like making sure that the recommendations are reasonable. And I think that one of the points that we make in the letter is that the project's unique in its scale, clear cutting excavation needs, and its close proximity to densely populated areas, other homes, and children at play. So I think with that as a backdrop, there are some things to consider. We do call these, some of the same concerns and recommendations that Jeff and others have raised, but I want to kind of reiterate what Anna said about the vibrations. This was, in our experience with the last project, it didn't seem like it was related to blasting. It wasn't clear it was related to earth removal. It seemed to me like it was related to felling of trees. we would be woken up in the morning, disturbed throughout the day with ground vibrations that felt sort of like earthquakes and things. We were a little bit worried about structure. We certainly couldn't sleep through that. We have and had at the time as well young kids. So there are some considerations that we put forward in the letter related to that. Other considerations were around traffic patterns and things, but I think that's pretty well addressed. The things that I would recommend we look at a little bit more closely are, you know, the tree removal. If we're right that it was about felling trees, we talk about sort of different methods to mitigate ground vibrations for particularly large trees. Perhaps there are ways to do those in sections rather than just like dropping them all at once. And then as far as work hours go, you mentioned work hours and days of the week, it's reasonable conditions from the court. You know, our kids are not construction workers, so they don't wake up at 7 a.m. necessarily. We recommended in the letter 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for work hours. We think that would be fair, especially given the proximity to it's a very densely populated area. It's a major construction project. So 8 a.m. is not something that you've spoken about. I thought we should consider that very carefully. It would, if the working hours are 7 a.m. to the evening, it will absolutely disturb our children's sleep. And so I recommended 8 a.m. I think the rest of the points, I think the rest of the points in the letter have been raised. So basically the two key points there are special consideration to particularly large trees and different methods for taking those down in a mitigated way, considering ground vibrations. And then secondly, limiting the working hours to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Theo, may I raise one issue?
Sure.
In response to this gentleman, my understanding, and I defer to town council, who's also on this call, I don't believe we have jurisdiction over the issue of trees, cutting, removal, etc., as long as it's not part of the earth removal. So that, because a number of folks and a number of the letters that are submitted raise issues about trees, I didn't think we had jurisdiction over that issue.
Right. This is focused on the earth removal itself. And I mean, there is a separate tree bylaw that would, if it's applicable, you know, could come up. But excuse me, I think you're right that this is solely focused on the earth removal and the conditions around that.
Thank you.
And so for people on the line who don't know who Christina Marshall is, she is town council. So
Theo, I will add for
Yep.
clarification that the tree preservation bylaw was part of the conversation with the planning board and the definitive subdivision plan. And the removal of certain trees on the individual building lots are subject to the tree preservation bylaw. And that is a separate application process that will happen prior to the issuance of building permits for each of those lots. However, the applicant, as part of that definitive subdivision plan process, is going through and will be working with the town's reviewing agent before the earth removal process happens to identify the trees that are subject to the tree removal bylaw, so that when the individual applications for the tree preservation bylaw are filed, that we do have a record plan of those trees that meet the requirements of the bylaw and process for mitigating the removal of those trees.
thanks. Then work hours. I want to ask, but I know what the answer is going to be. Mr. Ruda, would you be amenable to starting your work days at 8 a.m. instead of 7?
The jurisdiction of this permit is for earth removal, and you have already restricted the hours of 9 to 3.
Okay, good.
I'd
Thank
like
you.
to clarify, 9 to 3 only dealt with earth removal trucking hours. It did not deal with the actual site clearing and site work for the earth removal on the site.
Correct.
So, question then remains, would you be willing to start at 8 during work days and Saturdays?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
This site is sitting on a street that has 12,000 cars and trucks a day. And we need to be able to get in there at 7 a.m. to start work. And, you know, one of the concerns I've heard is the duration. So if we start restricting hours, we're going to be there that much longer. We are better off just, you know, I mean, I believe, I don't know of construction sites that start at 8 a.m. 7 a.m. is tough as it is. Most of our sites that we're operating now start at 6.
Understood, but I needed to ask. Thank you.
I understand.
Mr. Collins.
Thank you. Yeah, again, that last exchange, I mean, I don't know the range of sites Mr. Reeder works at, but you know, there's not only the noise of excavation, there's backup alarms on equipment, and I don't know to what extent the board in this process can consider the nuisance aspects of an operation. I think that nuisance will be considerable, as John Cooley pointed out. I think that's something that we could press on a little bit more, and I do believe that's reasonable with time restrictions. So I'd ask you to reconsider that.
To Mr. Collins' question, that is something that was considered and is still part of condition number 4, is that specific issue of nuisance noise, such as backup alarms. And condition 4 requires that they provide adequate vehicle turning area on the site so that the use of backup alarms is not excessive. So a truck can come in, navigate on the site, turn around, and doesn't have to, you know, do a 3-4 point turn to be able to turn around on the site.
Yeah, I appreciated that. I think whatever equipment, excavators, bulldozers, they won't be, you know, looping on the site. They'll be back and forth excavating. So just a specific point on item number 3, condition number 3, appreciated the change from 10 minutes idling to recognizing state law. I think it would be constructive to insert 5 minutes in there, you know, 5 minutes per state law. I imagine the developer will hand the permits to site operators, and for folks to say must conform with state law, they're not going to look that up. They probably know it really well, but to say 5 minutes in there would be specific, and I think that would be helpful for clarity. I'm a little troubled, or I just foresee trouble with the lack of specificity around dust. I can appreciate that it is non-specific. It can be subjective in some regards, but I think it'd be very helpful to have a sense of when, you know, it's just squishy language. When dust becomes an issue, who's to say, right? And so neighbors could feel it's an issue, and the developer could say it's not an issue, and that just becomes a hassle for the police, for the building commissioner. So I don't have a specific solution, but I think that's an issue. Hopefully it's not an issue. You know, you have spray trucks, calcium chloride, whatever. You know, Mr. Reeder may say, oh no, we're totally on top of that, and that would be great. We'd appreciate that, but it seems ill-defined, and it could be tightened up. Finally, I'd have a question. I wonder if Jeff Reeder could offer the community paint a picture briefly of timeline here, because I think that could help folks kind of anticipate what we're looking at in terms of, you know, you don't have to give us best case, worst case, but, you know, we're not going to hold you to this, but just like, here's what we're kind of planning around, both in terms of site preparation and rollout of the houses. I think many of us have seen the Comerford Road site, which frankly took years. I'm not familiar with whatever complexities you face there, but we are looking at a site that's going to be cleared for years, and these dust issues may last well beyond the excavation periods. So I think that could be really helpful too. Thank you.
Mr. Ruda, do you have a timeline that you can share with us?
Well, first of all, Concord Road was built and completed in 27 months. So that's a misstatement. It didn't take that long. We would expect pavement down in somewhere between 6 to 8 months, so that the entire infrastructure is done in that period. That's weather permitting. That can tie us up. House construction is going to be dependent upon sales, but we're expecting an absorption rate of at least a house a month. So we would hope to be able to, build the houses out in 2 to 3 years. And I do want to, everyone seems concerned with dust. We've been building in this town since, I believe, 2017, 2018, I believe. And your Board of Health, your building commissioner, they're tough. So it's my job with our site manager to keep you from calling the Board of Health for dust and everything else. I mean, I hear everybody. I don't blame you for being concerned about it. But if more than one call goes in, we're in trouble. Because your Board of Health and police will hold us accountable and shut us down. And that's the last thing in the world we want.
Great, thank you. Mr. Amster.
So busy listening, sorry.
That's okay.
Seems like issue is a big issue. Dust is a big issue, and it's pretty typical for sites to have fence line monitoring. So that if the decision is made to to quantify what's going on from a dust standpoint, that's a fairly simple thing to deal with. Putting out fence line samplers and coming up with a level that's acceptable and dealing with it that way. So there's no discussion about, well, I think it's dusty. No. This is worse. This is better than what it was last week or whatever. So I think that can be put to bed pretty quickly. A couple of other things. I haven't heard anything about pedestrian travel around this around the construction. You're dealing with children because of the school. You're dealing with all sorts of traffic with the library, and then also there's the Harvey Wheeler area where you've got the nursery and elder groups moving around as well. So I would hope that there's some kind of a plan to make sure that the pedestrian travel around this area is somehow dealt with. And living in across from Thoreau School, it's chaotic enough now with all the cars for the school, and it gets worse during the winter with the accumulations of snow on Central Street. And now that area is used as a cut through between 62 and Pine Street. So that is going to be an issue. It's probably going to get worse. And the other thing is the access to the site is through or using a road that empties out on Main Street. Is access going to be just one way, or are we going to have to worry about people coming from the other lane and going across traffic into the site? That's going to mess up especially the rush hour traffic in the morning and in the evening. And I think that's about it. I'd appreciate an answer to, or at least an understanding of how we're going to deal with these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Amster. I just a couple of responses to this. First of all, as was reiterated by Town Council earlier, this is we're talking about conditions for the earth removal permit. That's the first item. And second of all, there is a planning board decision with conditions that has been issued a few years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago now. So, and that addresses that planning board, those discussions, and that decision addressed all of your concerns in terms of access, etc. Elizabeth Hughes, did you want to add to that?
So just to somewhat reiterate, as far as the earth removal and the hauling, it is only limited to Main Street, either one way to Route 2 or the other way out towards Acton, Maynard. Whichever direction they go, yes, they are going to have to, trucks will have to cross Main Street. That is one of the reasons for the limitation on the hours for the earth removal hauling, which does not start till 9 a.m. And ends at 3 to try and limit the impact to those commuting hours. And additionally, that is the reason that a police detail will be required for that earth hauling, is to make sure that that those turning movements are kept safe. As part of the construction safety sequencing plan, there will be conversations about the sidewalk across the front and what measures will be taken to ensure pedestrian safety along that sidewalk.
Thank you.
Theo, if I could add to the last gentleman's comments, I think picking up on Elizabeth, and she's pointed out a couple of times, item 7, I find fairly restrictive as to the earth removal trucking off site. The 9 to 3 will eliminate, I think, a number of the issues the gentleman raised. And indeed, with the police on site, knowing the challenges of Main Street and the neighborhood with the library and Harvey Wheeler, etc., I believe that the police will, in conjunction with item 7, have those issues under control.
Great. Yep. Don't disagree. Thank you, Tom. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you. Scott Richardson, 260 Elsinore Street. I want to just revisit a couple things here briefly. My hope is that the ZBA will tonight take all the input and develop another draft document and really take the time and think through the one chance we have, as Jack said, to document this. This project is going to upset this neighborhood for at least 2 years. And I think we can take, I know you're volunteers and I appreciate your service to the community. I hope you'll take some time and reflect on all this. And I'd invite you to put yourself in the shoes of someone who lives next door to the development and think through from that perspective the specificity that you would want, the guarantees that you would want. Regarding the legalese, I can only say that the court's ruling allows you have the right to provide, you have the right to impose reasonable conditions on the earth removal operation, not the earth removal trucking, the earth removal operation, which presumably includes more than just trucking, that do not require change or alterations of the approved plans. Nothing we've proposed tonight requires changes to or alterations to the approved plans. They can build whatever kind of houses they want. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the earth removal operation, such as reasonable conditions relating to the hours and days of the work that may be conducted, such as, as we all know, means, for example. So it's not limited just to hours and days. The judge was tossing to you the opportunity to impose reasonable conditions on the earth removal operation, such as ours, but you could consider other things. So please don't shortchange your power to make this project somewhat workable for the people who are trying to raise their families in that neighborhood. Last thing I'll say is this, regarding dust and wind. I don't know if you've had a chance to see the site by Concord Green. It's also on Main Street in 62, closer to Route 2. It's a little pocket neighborhood going in there. If you haven't seen that site in the last week, I encourage you tomorrow to do what I did, which is to drive over, park in Concord Green, and walk across the street and look at it. Look at the proximity of the homes of the people who live next to that site. Look at what that site looks like now. Consider the other day when the wind was blowing so hard, it blew over the porta potty. That's what the neighbors are going to be dealing with this site. Those winds we've had here the last couple months, really fierce. Well, people who live right near this site are going to have to do it because of the earth removal, not because of the size of the houses, because of the earth removal. Go check out that site on Main Street tomorrow, and then come back to your document and think through every possible reasonable condition that we've said here tonight. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Marshall, would you want to respond on as far as timing goes?
Yes, so the original judgment from the land court actually only provided 30 days for the ZBA to issue, to consider and issue a permit in this case. And we did go back with the agreement of the developer and asked for more time. And a decision needs to be made by April 14th. So I hear you, but unfortunately, we do need to make a decision on this one before that date.
Thank you. Mr. Amster.
Yeah, sorry. Just as soon as I stepped back, I remembered something. What is going to happen if the people who live in the path of these trucks as they're removing things to the final destination? How are we going to deal with the dust and the other concerns that they may have? Just curious.
Mr. Amster, are you speaking of the trucks as they're hauling on Main Street?
Yes.
Okay, so all trucks leaving the site, there are, it's not I believe town council can correct me, but there are state requirements and federal requirements. Those trucks are required to be tarped before they exit the site. Additionally, as part of their stormwater pollution prevention plan, there are requirements dealing with the trucks leaving the site and making sure that there is no mud or debris that's being trucked off the site onto the public way. There's additional requirements for street sweeping at the end of the day, should it be needed. And all of that is part of the stormwater pollution prevention plan and the independent environmental monitor and Concord Public Works Engineering.
Thanks, thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooley.
Yeah, I heard and understood the response on the work hours and also on the trees. So just focusing on the work hours for the excavation, not the trees. And considering that, the proximity issue again to other houses, small children. Jeff Ruda, you said 8 a.m. is too late. 7 a.m. is more conventional. How about 7:30 for a start date for the work on the site? You said trucking is limited to 9. Work hours are 7. 8 a.m. is what I asked for, or what we asked for in the letter. How about 7:30 for that?
Already addressed this question.
Say that again, Ms. Ruda, sorry. Didn't hear you.
I've already addressed the question of changing the hours that are different on the permit.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I just want you
Sure.
to understand you're gonna be waking up little kids in the morning.
Mhm.
So you can take that position, but that's what you're doing.
Yep. Okay, I think we've gone, we've heard all the comments. We made some changes to the conditions, and given our timeline here, what's the fancy of the board? Elizabeth, Tom, Ravi, any comments, inputs?
Well, I'm comfortable that the draft decision that we've seen, that some of the applicants and the neighbors have seen, that we've made a few adjustments to those conditions, that we have a number of monitors in place, being the police department, being the environmental consultant, et cetera. And we've had some responses from the applicant. So I personally am comfortable that we've imposed reasonable conditions on this project. Let's face it, the neighbors don't like the project, and that's understandable. I live over in this neighborhood. I don't like it either, in the sense it takes away what I think is a lovely area. However, that's beyond our purview. And so, given the court's decision, which I did read pretty carefully, and I thought it was, while I may have disagreed with it, it was well articulated. And so I, for one, believe that the conditions as adjusted this evening, given the information that Elizabeth has very well given to us about dust control, et cetera, that I'm comfortable with the decision as adjusted tonight. So that's just me personally.
Right, thank you. I don't disagree with that, Ravi. You just came.
Yeah, I think we have taken a lot of time to think through this decision. I think it's been weeks. We have read carefully all of the letters that were submitted, and I think we've done our best to try and impose what conditions we can against the context of, what the law really says we can do in terms of reasonable conditions. And, I think there's always more that we could push for, but I think we've gone as far as we can. I understand we could step over the line and invite a lawsuit. That's not something that I'm interested in. So I don't think that we've been deferential to the developer here. I think that we've put good conditions in place. We've worked to push the developer to accept those, and I think we've gotten to a decision that I'm comfortable with here.
Thank you. Elizabeth, do you have anything to add?
I agree. I think within our jurisdiction, we've done all the reasonable things that are there to do, and I think we're almost there.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of agree with all of you.
Dale, can I ask one
Yep.
other question with town council on here that I'm remembering? So in this decision, this permit, similar to other decisions issued by the board, there is no reference to the voting members and the actual vote taken by the board. Is that something that I should incorporate?
You mean prior to the vote?
No, so other decisions issued by the Board of Appeals actually have a statement on the voting members and the vote taken, and that's actually in the decision.
Yes, you should put that in. I don't think you need to, type that in and screen share it tonight, but you should add that in after the vote.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I feel again, just as many of the neighbors, not necessarily very happy with the project, but you know, I'm relying on sort of the legal minds, the three legal minds on the board here, and then town council, that, you know, there was a framework set out by the judge, and that, you know, I think we were very much hamstrung by. And I think we still came up with some very reasonable conditions that will help. But yeah, it's going to be, you know, there's going to be some impact no matter what conditions we would write up tonight. There's going to be some conditions that there's going to be some impact to the neighbors no matter what the conditions say. So with that being said, and I did close the public comment section of this hearing, so I'm not taking any public comment anymore. So with that being said, is anybody wanting to make a motion? Elizabeth, go ahead.
All right. I move, let's see, I'm figuring out which part of the agenda I want to turn into the motion. I guess I'll just use all of it to be safe. I move that we grant Symes Development and Permitting LLC as a result of the judgment on the land court case 21 MISC 000486, appealing the denial of the application of Symes Development and Permitting LLC under section 7.5 of the zoning bylaw for the construction of a definitive subdivision requiring the removal of 60,690 cubic yards of earth at 146B and 1442 Main Street, 110 and 11B Highland Street, in accordance with the the land court's judgment, the hearing, anyways, sorry, I don't need that part. So that's what I move, that we grant that.
I have you add subject to the earth removal permit as discussed and amended this evening.
Yes, subject to the earth removal permit
Thank
as
you.
discussed and amended this evening.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Dwyer-Leonard,
Aye.
Mr. Faia,
Aye.
and chair votes aye as well. So this approves the earth removal permit with the conditions as discussed tonight. And with this, this was the last and only item on the agenda. So with this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your attending tonight.